So, okay. I'm Teresa Kavanagh, City Councillor for Bay Ward, and I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. This meeting is being recorded, and for those who do not want to have their visual, they can turn off their camera. Actually, I don't think that's an issue. It's only the panelists, so never mind that. Okay, but this will be available by YouTube and in our newsletter. So thanks everyone for coming out. This is an info session on an upcoming development at 1746 Carling Avenue. And this is at the corner that involves Boyd and Kerr. We'll have a presentation from Fotan Planning and Design, followed by a moderated Q&A. And I'd like to start off our meeting tonight by acknowledging that Ottawa is located on unceded Algonquin territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, and I'd like to honor the land and the peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose ancestors have lived on this territory for millennia, and whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Thank you. Now, for a quick overview of the development we're discussing today, the City of Ottawa has received zoning bylaw amendment and site plan control applications to permit 2 high-rise buildings along Carling, a mid-rise building along Kerr, and a park at the northwest corner of Boyd and Kerr Avenue. Now I'm going to pass it on to Gabby Scullin from Fotan, who will introduce the entire team and start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction and hosting us this evening, Councillor. My name is Gabby Scullin, or Amos as you might also see it. I'm a planner with Fotan Planning and Design, and I'm acting as the agent on behalf of the applicant properties group for the proposed development of 1746 Carling Avenue. We're also joined tonight by Kevin Reed from RLA Architecture, who will be speaking after me in regards to the design of the proposed buildings and site. In addition, Basil Ansari is also here tonight, who can answer any questions in regards to transportation. So like the councillor said, we'll get into our slide deck, and then follow that, we will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. There's also the opportunity to follow up. There may be some questions that we may not be able to answer on the fly tonight, but we would be happy to follow up with you afterwards in order to get your questions answered. So with that, I'll now share my screen and we can get started with the presentation. Excellent. So the development is currently under review by the City Planning Department for a zoning bylaw amendment application across the entirety of the site and a site plan control application for the southern portion of the site that will be developed first. Future site plan control applications will follow for the 2 proposed towers. In the big picture sense, site plan control applications involve the detailed design process of a development, where the design functionally and safely is refined, whereas the zoning bylaw amendment application seeks to establish the building footprint and height. So starting off the neighborhood context, the site is located in the Bay Ward 7 in the Laurentian neighborhood. The site is bound by Carling Avenue to the north, Boyd Avenue to the east, and Kerr Avenue to the south. In the nearby context along Carling Avenue, a 22-story tower and an 8-story building were recently constructed, along with a 28-story tower that is currently under development review. All of these are providing additional residential density along the 6-lane arterial Main Street. There is also a bus stop that is located at the northeast corner of the site, served by OC Transpo Route 85. Areas to the east and south are characterized by low-rise commercial and institution buildings. Low-rise semi-detached units are situated along Kerr Avenue to the southwest of the site. The subject site is the consolidation of the following 5 properties that were acquired by the property owner to realize the potential for greater development in the area. So the City of Ottawa has recently enacted a new zoning bylaw, 2026-50, whereas this was not yet in effect when the applications were deemed complete back in February of 2026. Between the 2 zoning bylaws, the zone boundaries do remain the same, with a portion of the lands to be zoned in accordance with the Main Street zone. 828 Boyd Avenue, that is to be the parkland, is zoned general industrial under the previous zoning bylaw, but neighborhood mixed use under the new bylaw. We are seeking some relief from the 2008-250 old zoning provisions as requested through the planning justification report to introduce the high-rise use and increase the maximum permitted height of up to 32 stories or 102 meters. A site-specific schedule will be prepared that indicates where these towers can be placed, effectively limiting this height to only the approved tower footprints. Thus, we're not seeking to achieve 102 meters across the entirety of the site. Additional zoning relief was requested to reduce the interior side yard setback for the 9-story building to the west for the portion of the building situated more than 20 meters back from the street, whereas it did meet the setback closer to the street. An amendment is additionally sought to permit indoor rooftop amenity spaces for each new tower as permitted projections to the maximum height. The proposed 250 square meters represents a modest and careful controlled addition to the rooftop level. This limited area is intended to transform otherwise residual roof space into a functional and high-quality indoor amenity space for the residents. By situating the space within the same envelope as the permitted mechanical penthouse projection, the design ensures that the amenity areas remain visually and physically subordinate to the physical tower form and will not increase the overall height of the structures. The two final amendments are sought to reduce the width of the parking garage aisle and private way width from 6.7 meters to 6 meters. 6 meters in an accepted width for safe two-way traffic movements for apartment buildings outside the planned unit of developments and within our new zoning bylaw. Switching now over to our official plan, the site is designated Main Street corridor with an evolving neighborhoods overlay within the inner urban transect of the official plan. The official plan directs this area of the city to evolve through the introduction of new residential uses, mixed commercial uses, improved active and public transportation routes. Through the official plan, height is sought up to 40 stories along Main Street corridors, such as Carling Avenue, where permitted. When the conditions for this include when the adjacent right-of-way is greater than 30 meters wide and the parcel is of sufficient size to accommodate a tower. Through the city-identified road widening, this section of Carling Avenue has a protected right-of-way width of 44.5 meters. Through this development application, the applicant shall dedicate additional width to the right-of-way in favor of creating new pedestrian and cycling protected spaces. I will be handing the presentation off to our architecture team at RLA to discuss the proposed design of the site, but first I just wanted to introduce the general organization. The development proposes 4 main components: 2 mixed-use towers at 28 and 32 stories, both oriented to Carling Avenue, and a 9-story seniors residence along Kerr. At the corner of Kerr and Boyd is proposed to be a new neighborhood park comprised of 10% of the total lot area. The 9-story building and the parkland are phase 1 of this development. Phase 2 will follow with Tower A, and phase 3 will be Tower B. The Carling Avenue frontage will be animated with ground floor commercial uses and newly pedestrianized areas, providing an increased road to building setback, complete with new street trees, street furniture, planting beds, and a bike lane. Residential parking will be located in 3 levels of underground garages with access from Boyd Avenue for the towers and Kerr for the seniors building. Additionally, there is some internal surface parking lot for visitors to the site. And here's just a quick little snapshot of the development statistics. Importantly, looking at the total unit count of 749 units, of which 627 of these are proposed within the 2 towers. Okay, and I'll hand it off to Kevin from RLA in order to get into the design. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gabby, and good evening, everyone. Good evening, Councillor Kavanagh and members of the community. It's so good to see you all. Hopefully we've got past the winter weather here in Ottawa and we could focus on better and warmer things and birds and flowers to come in the days to come. And we start off here, we're just looking at the site plan. So an overview of the entire proposed development area. So as Gabby had kind of touched on, you have Carling at the top of your screen. You have Boyd Avenue at the right-hand side of the page. And at page south, you have Kerr Avenue. And building A in that upper right-hand corner is 32 stories. And it's parallel to Carling, whereas Tower B to the left of that, it steps down to 28 stories and it's perpendicular to Carling. And then we go down to the 9-story building along Kerr Avenue at the south of the page, a 9-story building. And you have a very kind of strategically positioned internal courtyard to deal with surface parking. We very much wanted to have a very beautiful and urban condition around the periphery of the sites, fronting all the streets. We preferred not to have parking between the buildings and those street edges. And we feel like this is a really great strategy for dealing with that condition. So there's a lot more pedestrian-friendly conditions and plantings. And as Gabby had touched on in that lower south east quadrant of the site, you have that parkland dedication, which is just shy of about 1,000 square meters at 984 square meters. Can you go to the next slide there, Gabby? So this is a more detailed view of that ground floor condition. You could see at each of the 3 buildings, you have a lot of that non-residential uses. We have amenity uses. In some cases along Carling Avenue, you see the building at the upper right-hand side. We have some live-work units, and then the commercial space at the furthest east. And then building B has a similar mix of uses. We have a commercial unit fronting onto Carling, and then we have a mix of amenity uses and live-work units. And we try and deal with as much of the utility, such as garbage and recycling and bike storage at grade for pickup and management of those uses, as well as mail and parcel delivery. You have each of those located within the lobby area of each of the 3 buildings. We do have some ground-oriented units as well in the building C, those 1-bedroom plus dens that front onto Kerr, and a really kind of nice condition where you have a pedestrian walkway connecting with that the civic walkway, the municipal walkway, and pedestrian sidewalk around the entirety of the site. And you can lead into those internal conditions, whether it be through the parkland dedication or internal to the site to that interior parking area. You can go to the next slide. So just working our way up through the building, this is a typical level 2 to level 4 of the buildings. And you can see that we're on each of the floors having a nice mix of anywhere from studio units and 1-bedrooms to 1-bedroom plus dens, 2-bedroom units, 2-bedroom plus dens, and in some cases, the largest configuration of 3-bedroom units. You can go to the next slide, Gabby. Some elevations. This is building A, the tallest on the left-hand side of your page. So this would be the from the north side of the proposed development on Carling Avenue, rather, looking back towards the site. So you have that parallel orientation of the building A on your left, and then that perpendicular orientation of building B as you step down to that 28-story development on the right-hand side of the page towards the west. Go to the next slide. And this is a view along what would be, I guess you could say, to the east, which would be Boyd Avenue. So you're looking back, Carling Ave to the right-hand side of the page. So at that corner, you have that highest proposed structure, and that's building A. And then the lowest proposed on Kerr at page left, and that's the 9-story with the parkland dedication in the foreground there. So this would be taken from Kerr. So you're at the south of the proposed development and you're looking back towards the site. You can see that the parkland dedication establishes that nice kind of intervening ground between Boyd, which is the far right, and the building C, which is that 9-story building in the foreground. And a view from the west. So again, you have that building C on the right-hand side on Kerr, building B, which is the 28-story building on the left-hand side of the page. That is fronting onto Carling. So this is that view again from the west. And some rendered views. So this would be Carling Avenue looking towards the west. So you see that more prominent structure really complete in the corner between Carling and Boyd, right in the foreground. And then you step down to that 28-story building just beyond that in the background. And a view from the opposite side. So this is looking down Carling towards the east. So you have now building B in the foreground. You can see building A in the at the left-hand side of that. And then the 9-story building C on the right-hand side, that's fronting onto Kerr. And this is a view from Kerr Avenue. So you're now looking towards that 9-story. And we wanted to really differentiate this building from the high-rise conditions that you see on Carling. So the idea is that you have, in this case, difference in the color of the masonry, just to give it a more kind of domestic condition and fit and finish on that Kerr Avenue. And as you can see on the right-hand side there, there's that parkland dedication. These are some views of the internal courtyard. So you have on the lower hand of the screen, building B on the left, building A on the right. And as you move up towards the right-hand side of the page, you have building B on the right-hand side, and you're kind of looking through that threshold condition that you have from Carling Avenue. You can see building C in the background at the back of the courtyard. And on the upper left-hand side, this is the backside this is the roadside Carling Avenue and Boyd corner there. So you're looking at that commercial condition at building A there. These are some massing views. So you're seeing our subject buildings kind of in the center of your screen in that kind of gray materiality. And then projected as of right massing that you see built out in green. So that suggests things that are not currently built, but those are, I guess you could say, how things could be in future conditions if we're following the zoning principles. And Gabby, did you want me to touch on the next slide, or did you want Basil to discuss transportation and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, let's hand it over to our transportation expert. We do have some additional slides that we could pull up with additional materials from RLA if there are more questions. But just in the interest of time, we'll let Basil take it away with transportation.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin and Gabby. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to take a few minutes here to go through some of the transportation elements that are being proposed for the site. So starting with connectivity, as you can see, there's that image on the right that shows it corresponds to different colors, different travel modes. So blue is meant to be pedestrian areas, the purple is cycling, and the red is the transit stop that's bordering the site. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of pedestrian walkways being provided within the property. New sidewalks are being provided on Boyd, where there is none today, and on Kerr Avenue as well. The pedestrian facilities, they bound every building and connect to multiple points to the adjacent sidewalks, so Kerr, Boyd, and Carling Avenue. In purple, you could see at the top there, bordering Carling Avenue is the cycling facility. It's a delineated cycle track that is separated from the road, and that is part of a future city project that is having bike lanes on Carling Avenue. And then in red is the transit, which is the bus stop. Today, it's right at the corner of Boyd and Carling Avenue, and it's a flag post, but it's being upgraded and a shelter is being provided as well as a landing zone, and it's being shifted slightly west. So Carling Avenue, I think I should note as well, it's a future project you have. That would be in the previous slide. Sorry, Gabby. So Carling Avenue, it's a proposed transit priority corridor that is in the priority network, and then in the future you have a BRT being proposed. So we can move on to the next slide. So in terms of vehicle accesses, you have access being proposed off of Boyd Avenue, and then that accesses both towers A and B, and you have a parking ramp that's being provided for Tower C off of Kerr Avenue. And there's on the right, you could see some purple areas. Those are lay-bys that would be used for pickups and drop-offs. And there's 2 truck loading areas, which Kevin touched on, and they're being provided for buildings B and C. You can expect infrequent operations of trucks that I guess move in vehicles or garbage pickup, that sort of thing. And then in terms of parking, there's 2 ramps being provided. As mentioned, there's one that's on Kerr that accesses Tower C, and then one along the internal driveway of the site that connects to Boyd Avenue. And those are shown in blue in the image. So the 2 ramps, they provide underground parking, and parking is separated between towers A and B. Well, towers A and B have a shared parking, underground parking, and then tower C is separated. And in total, there's 505 underground spaces with 30 surface spaces being proposed in the courtyard area. Bike parking, it's being proposed 382 bike parking spaces, mostly underground and on ground level, so they're covered from and weather protected. And both the bike parking and the vehicle parking meet minimum requirements of the zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. So in terms of traffic forecast, what the development is generating, we applied city standard practice in estimating the number of trips and the expected number. And we look at the peak hours, morning and afternoon peak hours, because those are the most critical time periods during the day. And the expected number of trips is up to 120 vehicle trips. And within those 120 vehicle trips, you can expect 30 passenger trips. And then 90 transit trips and 60 active transport trips, which is walking and cycling. Next slide, please. So speaking to network and traffic impacts, we analyzed in our transportation impact assessment report several intersections in the study area, and they're shown on the right here, where 4 of them are signalized major intersections, 3 are on Carling, 1 on Clyde, and there are 2 unsignalized intersections. Those are the ones on Boyd Avenue connecting to Kerr Avenue and Carling Avenue. So the TIA report, it analyzes both multimodal operations, which is pedestrians, transit, cycling, and public realm. And it shows improvements based on the development, what the development's proposing at the frontages compared to what there is today, which is expected considering they're adding sidewalks, new cycling lane, and upgrading the transit stop. And then in terms of the traffic operations, as expected, there would be slight increases in delays at Clyde, Broadview, and the intersections in the study area, but we found that with minor signal timing adjustments, so adjusting the green times at intersections, it can be accommodated within acceptable city standards. And with that, I think I'll pass it back to Gabby.
So thank you very much to all of our presenters. At this time, we've gone through all of the slides that we intended to start with. I see that we already have some questions in our Q&A. I will pass it off to Kiara, who is going to be moderating this portion.
Thanks so much, Gabby, and thanks to everyone for presenting. I'm actually going to pass it back to Councillor Kavanagh because we've just been chatting, looking at the number of panelists. So I'll pass it over to Councillor Kavanagh.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a smaller group, like it's not too many people, but so we can have people ask questions by making you a panelist, or if you prefer the question and answer format, you can just put your question in and we'll read it and get an answer for you. So just indicate if you would like to ask a question, and as a panelist, you can. We ask that you ask questions. This is not, it's not for statements, it's for questions. So please let us know if you have a question you want to ask the panelists, okay? But for starters, I'll start off with the questions that have already been presented. And that is, what is the contact information to send questions to should ones previously submitted not be answered tonight? Unfortunately, if they've been submitted to the city, I don't think Fotan or the developer has a copy of those yet. I don't think so. Is that correct? You wouldn't have the report yet from the city planner.
Hi, Councillor. It's Jacob Bolduc here from Foten. I work with Gabby, for those who don't know me here. We received the comments on Friday afternoon, and we've only disseminated them to the team today. We've had a chance to look at them as much as we can, getting ready for the meeting tonight. But I would continue to say that if you have any questions, you could, and I apologize if I'm offering this up, circulate any questions through your councillor's office, as always, but also to the lead planner on the file, Kimberly Baldwin, whose contact information is available through the DevApps web portal.
Yes, and I believe some people have already submitted their comments, and that's what they're referring to. So if you have questions you want that you submitted and want them, just put it in the question format. So I'm not reading statements, I'm reading questions. So if you have a question, please put it forward. Or if you want to just indicate, I would like to ask my question as a panelist, then please indicate that, and we'll make you a panelist so that you can ask your question live. Okay? So looking for any more questions? Okay, I'm asking for questions. Is there a question? You can put statements in, but what I'm asking is there a question here? Yeah, hi, Jake.
Hi, Councillor. I am seeing a question. I think we're starting to get them to roll in, but I see a question about the existing businesses.
Okay.
And maybe I could hazard a response by saying that the current plan is to, again, develop phase one, which is at the rear of the property, where it's currently vacant, and then proceed with phases 2 and 3 along Carling Avenue at a future date. When we're prepared to proceed with phases 2 and 3, obviously those buildings will need to be demolished and those businesses will need to relocate. But the plan is right now to start, and we've got more than enough to chew on building 1 in the parkland, which again will not require any relocation of the existing businesses.
There's a question about, in 2008, there was a death of a 16-year-old at Carling and Broadview. How do you intend to direct 95 new vehicles through this intersection?
I'm happy to address that question. So every new development goes through what's called a transportation impact assessment. That's why Basil's here from our transportation team. And those are a cumulative and iterative process, meaning that every new development at the zoning stage and at the site plan stage prepares a new analysis of the available traffic data and the synchro analysis so that these projects build on one another and we have the most up-to-date available information. I can't speak to any collision information. I can't speak to any specifics about a death, but I can say that we will continue to work with city staff in supplying that TIA and that information to make sure that any new development meets the safety thresholds for intersections.
If I could add to that, maybe for the collisions aspect of it, the TIA looks at the previous 5 years or the most recent 5-year data available in terms of collisions in the area. So we do know that I guess the period that we looked at between 2018 and 2022, we do know that the city constantly and incrementally implements improvements to modify intersections in terms of safety aspects and to try to reduce the collisions. So some of those, for example, are providing at signalized intersections, major ones like Broadview and Carling and other Carling intersections, making the left turn signals fully protected, as in it's separated between vehicles and pedestrians so they don't have to conflict for the left turns. And so they constantly implement these sort of measures to try and prevent these sorts of accidents from happening. But our study does not go back as far as 2008 in terms of looking at collision data.
Okay, thank you. We have a question. There was a cycle track in the mock-up. Would that cycle track be just the one block, or is this the plan for the continuous cycle track along the whole of Carling? And who's responsible for the cycle track in this instance, developer or city? I think I can help you with that one in terms of answering.
Well, the cycle track, that's a city project. It's depicted on the site plan just to I guess showcase it in the future. So in the future, the plan is for the city to provide cycle tracks and bus lanes on Carling Avenue. And so this is supporting that project by the city.
So
If I could add to that, Councillor, apologies. So when we're preparing for a project like this, for those who don't know, the City of Ottawa official plan has a protected right-of-way. And essentially what that means is that every road or most roads, especially major roads like Carling, are assigned a width, in this case 44.5 meters. And the city goes through a very detailed exercise to design what the road is going to look like within that 44.5 meters or 30 meters or whatever it is on that particular road. And in this case on Carling, they've obviously been anticipated for upgraded transit, including, well, there's a plan between the LRT and a bus lane, but there's a discussion there to be had. But essentially transit, vehicles, cycles, or bicycles, and pedestrians. And so that all gets weighed out. And as part of our project, we have to show how much land we're required to give the city in order to fulfill that cross section for Carling Avenue. So in this case, we're doing our part by giving that land and accommodating it as part of our design. And every developer, as Carling Avenue develops, feeds into that project until we have a full continuous cycling lane.
I'm just going to add that as much as I want cycle lanes, everyone knows I like to cycle, and bus lanes as well, I am not getting positive feedback from the city on this happening anywhere in the near future, not even close. So my question to you is, what is your timeline? Because the timeline, if you're depending on these transportation modes, they're not coming for a long time. We have been waiting and waiting, and I have asked and asked, and the bus lanes have been on hold for quite a while. So how does that affect the project?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. The designation is Main Street under the official plan, which for those who don't know is the second highest order of density. And essentially within hubs, which is the highest, you would have the greatest amount of high density and transit service. And then on Main Street, you'd have sort of that second level of service. The question specifically is if those buses are delayed, or if the upgrades along Carling are different from what's envisioned in the official plan or the transportation master plan, how does that affect our development timelines? I think the short answer is that we're starting with phase one, which is our shortest building with our fewest number of units. That's a project that would be suitable under the existing zoning at 9 stories or 30 meters, and represents a level of service or a density that is already anticipated under the current zoning bylaw, the official plan, and the entire planning framework. The additional density on the 2 buildings at the front A and B are supported under the official plan, but obviously would benefit from a higher level of transit service. And so it's that chicken and the egg situation where do you build the development first and then the transit follows when the city sees those investments and those catchment areas grow as it anticipates the need for more transit ridership? Or do you budget for those transit services first and then allow for the density? But often at that point, the city's playing catch up. So it's a difficult discussion in planning and transportation. We have it all the time. But short answer is on this project, we're starting with phase one and then see how it goes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Do you have a timeline for phase one?
Phase one, I might defer to Andrew Glass here from the developer side, but what I can say is that we are rezoning the site and then submitting site plan for phase one. Typically, developers don't submit for site plan if they're not prepared to advance within the next couple of years.
Correct. Thank you, Jacob. It's Andrew here, Councillor Kavanagh. Thank you. That's correct, Jacob. I mean, we're advancing with a site plan on that south portion, on Kerr Street. So probably, within the, 3 to 5 year time frame after site plan approval is obtained. Be rough timing for that. And again, the future phases to the north and as you head north through the site and east, they're down the road sometime.
Okay. No, it's good to know. I've been asking this question a lot of the city staff, as we expect, and we have, as you pointed out, we have Main Street zoning along Carling, and how does that match up with what we're doing on Carling Avenue? And so far, there hasn't been much movement. So it had been planned, but it got shelved because it's more complicated and expensive than they thought. So I'm going on to the next question. Someone has asked about building shadows at various times of the year. Do you have that available?
So our shadow study is included as part, I believe, of our UDRP report, which should be posted on DevApps. Yeah. So I think I did see a public comment come in about that through the technical circulation. Again, I apologize. We got them, working day about 24 hours ago. But one of the things that's noted in there is the delta between what's permitted under the as of right zoning and then what you're proposing. And it was noted specifically that there's a pretty significant delta. So to answer that question directly, those materials are available online through our UDRP report. The proposed design has changed slightly, mostly at the site plan level. We moved a vehicular access, for example, that was proposed on Carling, and now that's only on the east side. But you can see that difference in terms of what's permitted under the zoning bylaw versus what's being proposed. And as noted in that public comment, it's significant. To address that quickly, there's right now 2 zoning bylaws. We're kind of in a weird gray area, and there's a lot of discussion in the development industry in Ottawa about how this is going to work over the next little while. So for those who don't know, the zoning bylaw was approved in January. It was enacted in March, and following enactment, the City of Ottawa, it's my understanding, has received several appeals, and those appeals are going to take quite a long time to resolve. And so right now we have 2 zoning bylaws. What's important to note about the new zoning bylaw is that the height on this site would allow up to about 100 meters because it is located on Main Street, and the MS2 zone would allow for a building height of 100 meters, subject to transition to abutting properties and 45-degree angular plane on the rear side, etc. So the delta that you're seeing in those images is prepared based on the existing zoning, which only allows for about 9 stories or 30 meters. And so the delta would be much shorter, obviously, going from 102 meters to 100 meters than going from 102 meters down to 30 meters. So at first glance, it might appear quite significant until it's placed within the context of the new zoning bylaw and the planned framework for development in this area.
Jacob,
Thank
I
you.
believe the question also asks why it's shown at different times of the year. If you could touch on that.
Oh, yeah, I can touch on that briefly. So typically we show the solstice and then at the peak essentially in June. So March, June, September. And the reason for that being is we tend to lean on March and September as they represent the more typical condition. When you get to June, the sun is highest in the sky. And the shadows are a little bit shorter. And then when you get to December, obviously with the long winter sun, those shadows are longer, but you don't have as much sun during the day. So we tend to lean more on March and September because of the axis and rotation of the Earth.
Thank you. I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions in the chat. Q&A. For building frontages, will there be a building entrance that's the next? Where will the building entrances and exits be? Can there be generous awnings worked into the plans since they provide shade?
So maybe I'll take that one, Councillor. We typically do design for awning and protective measures at entrances. And then depending on the strategy for commercial entrances as well, sometimes it's either a seasonal or a fixed canopy, again, to give shelter from inclement weather. So that is a typical thing that we would provide. So as we move, as Jacob had said, as we move further into site plan control for each of the successive buildings, there'd just be more and more detail provided about that, the specific design of each one. So building C on Kerr being the first one through the door for site plan, you'll get more and more detail of that building as we progress through that design phase.
Okay. This is one I can answer. It's more about the neighborhood. It's about the fact that this is an industrial neighborhood and is the city's overall plan to push out industrial businesses in the area and turn them over to residential. For those of you who use it for your mechanics, etc., it is the plan. It's the zoning has changed. This is an area that is very central and so that's why it was considered optimal for residential, as well as being on a major artery that is expected to have transit in the future. So that is the reasoning. Yes, there'll still be businesses, still, probably not immediately on Carling, probably more on side streets. There's still industrial sections. I don't have it right in front of me, the mapping, but that is all blended in because we still need small businesses in our communities as we, it's always helpful. So just looking at the next question. Recent tower developments have resulted in sound issues resulting from rooftop equipment. Will this be identified as a concern to resolve before final designs are completed?
So acoustics are something that are required for site plan control and building permits. So we are tasked with providing tests and reports that basically demonstrate that we're not going to be a nuisance to the neighborhood. But also we have to think, if we're going to be building 3 buildings in close proximity to one another, we also don't want to upset the people in the adjacent buildings as well. So we're modeling in those acoustic, stationary acoustic studies, we're modeling the size of the equipment that's proposed by the mechanical electrical engineers. And then we take a look at the proximity of both existing and future conditions and residents. And then we model out what those conditions are. And then if there is an issue, then we have to design measures to mitigate acoustics generated from rooftop equipment. So that could be shielding or acoustical jackets for mechanical and electrical equipment. So they are very strict measures that we have to abide by.
Thank you.
I would also, if I may, just add to Kevin's comment to say that similar to the TIAs, noise studies are an iterative process. So we have a noise study that was submitted for the site and the phase 1 site plan. But for phase 2 and 3, those buildings at site plan control would also be subject to a follow-up report to look at any new development in the area, if there's been an increase in noise as a result of increased traffic, or similarly, if the mechanical equipment from this building will affect either of those new buildings. So as the process evolves, those studies are completed and recompleted to account for all new variables.
Okay. This is one that we've actually got an answer for in advance. The city has scheduled the 2026-2027 water and sewer project along Kerr Avenue. Will the project be coordinated with the new Tower C development? And the answer is yes. The city's linear asset management team is aware of the application and will coordinate with the developer if the timelines for the two projects overlap. So just so, and you're aware that there's work being done on Kerr. Okay. So did I miss one? Oh, in terms of asking about how to make, for making more car-free choices, that's obviously being encouraged, and we hope to have bus lanes on Carling again. Been pushing. But I'm going to ask a question too about car share. Are you going to have car share to reduce the number of cars?
Andrew, do you want me to take that, or Jacob?
Yeah. That's something I think we could consider as time goes on. It hasn't been. We're just not at that level of detail at this point to make that determination, unfortunately. But those are the sort of things we'll have to consider, along with a lot of other, technological advances in car. You have to also think about like electric vehicles and charging stations, all those kinds of things. But it's still very premature in the stage for that at this point.
Okay.
But I would also add, if I may, Councillor, sorry, is just that there is a division between the parking for phase 1 and then the parking for phases 2 and 3. So a car share space, given it would be hopefully accessible to the public through a virtual car or a communauto, would probably be located in the surface parking lot that's primarily there to serve visitor parking and the commercial uses and the live work units that are there. Phase 1 has its own parking garage, and so if it was to be a car share, it would be underground and it would be for those tenants only. Again, something we could explore, but typically when we're asked for car share, it's for not just the development, it's for the neighborhood as well.
Okay. Related to that, there's 17 exterior visitor parking spots. Where will visitors be parking for phase 1 when phase 1 is being completed?
So building on that, Kevin, it's your design, but my understanding is that the visitor parking would be in the underground because phase 1 only has an underground parking lot. It does not have any surface parking. So for any visitors coming to the site, typically either they would be let in by the resident or sometimes there's a number pad with a visitor's code that is assigned so that people can enter the building. That's to be determined through the construction process, but it's not uncommon to have visitor parking underground.
Okay. Have you anticipated what kinds of ground floor tenants might be there in the mixed-use tower? Retail, groceries, restaurant, offices, and is there anything that you're ruling out?
Andrew, do you want me to take that, or?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Kevin.
So for the mixed-use projects in those phases 2 and 3, I think it's too early to tell. It seems like especially after we're post-COVID, that the whole commercial industry, like walk-up bricks and mortar commercial space, it seems to be changing year over year. So by the time we actually get to doing commercial fit-ups for these buildings that are 2, 5, 8 years out, it seems like the industry has gone through another notch in its evolutionary scale. So it's too difficult at this time to say exactly what would fit in there. And it will probably involve some level of market research on whoever the developer owner is for each of the phases, and see what the community is looking for. So that's usually what is the most valuable process that's put towards determining what commercial uses go in.
Okay, but they will be commercial. It will stay commercial.
There is commercial space earmarked. And then I think I touched on it when Gabby was going through the slides, that there's this idea of maybe even having live work space where people could have their own business in their place of residence, whether they be a professional or a service provider that doesn't have a large commercial footprint requirement, and they get to save on the very high commercial taxes that we see in a lot of cities.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about recreation, local recreation. Are you consulting with nearby community centers to adequately plan for programs and services with new neighbors that come with this high density?
I'm happy to take that one, Councillor. So the application gets circulated to the different departments at the City of Ottawa, and they take that data and make decisions in the same way that school boards, for example, are circulated. It's a question we often get is, have you planned for the schools? All development applications are circulated and the school boards make their own decisions to say that actually we're seeing development pressure in this area and we're going to re-strategize or build a new school, or in the case of subdivisions, we need a new school. Let's take some of the land or ask for some of the land. So we don't directly engage with the recreation department and have them provide feedback to us about, for example, if a new rink or a new basketball court is needed in the area. The closest we get to that would be the parkland dedication, where we work closely with the parkland team in order to identify appropriate locations for parkland and provide that dedication as part of the project. So the short answer is the city's departments responsible for tracking those numbers would be made aware of this new development and the potential development pressures that are coming to the area, and can make strategic decisions based on that and the growth forecasts under the official plan.
Okay, thank you. What is required? Well, this is a question for the city. What is required by the city in order to initiate a traffic safety analysis in McKellar Heights area, which is greatly impacted by the Broadview Kerr intersection? Frankly, we're constantly doing traffic safety analysis. My office gets questions all the time because traffic patterns change constantly on streets that have been there forever and have hardly any change. But for some reason, people say there's more traffic. So we work with communities on traffic safety analysis. In terms of the impact, that is difficult, and I'll be frank with you that it's not. There is a traffic study done by the developer that's submitted. It's in the dev apps. But in terms of further analysis, the city does do analysis of what concerns people in the neighborhood. I don't know if you want to add anything in terms of your own analysis.
I just wanted to note, because again, this was something that came up through the comments that we have received, and I do recall there was a question about why the TIA is labeled as a draft. And I just want to clarify that that's standard procedure with the City of Ottawa. They always ask for a draft copy of the report. They provide comments through the technical circulation process, and those comments we just received. And once the city is satisfied that everything's been addressed, a final version is issued and then kept on record. So it's a little bit different to the way we were in a lot of our other reports, where we wouldn't submit a draft geotech, for example. But that is standard procedure, just because that was one of the questions we'd received.
Okay. The next question is, what is the estimated timing of completion of the whole project?
That, like Kevin said earlier, is really very difficult to predict. I mean, a lot of that is dependent on the market. I mean, I think as far as we can go is the sort of order of how it would take place, starting from the 9-story building, and then probably moving north and then east into the corner, or perhaps from the corner back to the west. But in the near term, I would call it the near term is the 9-story building. There's we obviously got to get through these approvals, both the zoning and site plan approval. There's a fair bit of site work that needs to take place. So I mean, we're still easily 5 years out before we even start into that. I think at this point, but
just to add to that, development files in the last 8 years, I've had a number of them, and only one has moved towards actually building. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of factors that can affect from the now to then, and that includes just interest rates, costs of material, just about everything can affect when a decision is made. I've got buildings that were approved in 2020 that are not built yet. So there's no guarantee. There's no timelines on that they have to be built within a certain time frame or anything like that. I know the city would love that, but it's a little hard to enforce or figure, because of the factors that are involved.
Right.
So
aspirationally, I think we can talk about five, in that 5-year time frame, seeing starting. But like I say, there are a lot of balls in the air with interest rates, market conditions, all those things that are taking place right now. It makes it difficult to put a hard number to that.
Yeah, okay. I would just add that from a planning perspective, once there's a site plan agreement in place, and that requires site plan approval, making sure you concur with the conditions. There's a whole bunch of legal and administrative stuff. But once that site plan agreement is signed, typically there is a timeline on the project, and of course developers can seek an extension, but that's subject to approval from the city. But it is to say, typically you don't submit for site plan if you're not getting your ducks in a row, I suppose.
Okay. Yes. It's moved up quite a bit. I've got a question, and that's the affordability of the units. One of the biggest concerns right now in Ottawa is for people to find affordable units, particularly for seniors. And just want to know, are you going to have affordable housing units?
I'm happy to. Well, Andrew, do you want to take it, or okay?
You bet.
As part of the submission right now, we haven't detailed as part of our submission any affordable housing units. So that's not a number that we can give. What I can say is a lot of things change, similar to what we just talked about. Sometimes if you're providing affordable housing, you can get privileged interest rates through different lenders, for example, CMHC. So there's opportunities out there and programs and grants that some of which we're still kind of waiting on details for. So it's not to say it couldn't happen, but right now the answer would be no. There are no affordable units planned, but that there could be some options in the future to introduce that. We do have a generally healthy unit mix, as noted through the report, so up to 3 bedrooms from studios, depending on which building format we're looking at. But the goal is to provide a range of housing options, including some larger units, so that that contributes to the mix of units in the area. And then hopefully, if people can find the unit that works for them, instead of being stuck in a 1-bedroom when they need a 2-bedroom, or having a 3-bedroom they don't need anymore, that people can kind of slot into the right units for them.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions new. Okay, there's one that's come in. Okay. Regarding the team's comments on development timelines and managing uncertainty, does that mean that the final result could be lower than 32 or 28 stories? In other words, are these proposed building heights an up to figure? And are they going to be rental or for sale condos?
My understanding at this time is they are purpose-built rentals. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's important to note because there are different for example, incentives for development charges that are available for rental projects versus condos. So we do sort of need to know that right off the bat. It doesn't mean that rental buildings can't eventually become condos. There's a whole process for that, but that's not the plan right now. It's purpose-built rentals, and the opportunities that those provide. And then in terms of the overall height and maximum, when you're going through a rezoning exercise, you're setting the parameters. So you're saying up to this. It doesn't mean that if in a scenario, one of the buildings were developed lower, that all of a sudden the other one can be taller. This would be the cap, and typically the way that's expressed in the zoning bylaw is through a height schedule. A height schedule looks like the site plan, but it's a little more simplified with easier shapes. And it just says, for example, area A is allowed 102 meters or 32 stories. And that way, if you wanted to exceed that, you would have to reapply for a zoning bylaw amendment. If you wanted to build under it, of course, you would be allowed to do so.
This is something that may fall under site plan more, but vehicles like Amazon and Uber that stop right in front of the building. There's concerns about that could block bus lanes in the future. How will the city and developer ensure that that doesn't happen in front of these buildings?
So I think I touched on it before, Councillor, when we were looking at the site plan. We're really trying to focus on vehicular usage within the courtyard space. Building C does have a curb cut along Kerr. So if you do have, say, like a 30-second drop off, that might accommodate that. But primarily, we want to deal with Uber and deliveries of that nature internal to the courtyard. That doesn't mean that we can control the bad behavior of an Amazon driver on Carling, but Carling is a very busy street, so they stop along there at their own detriment. So,
yes, and this is actually an issue downtown. I can tell you as a cyclist, and there's it's about bylaw, and it's about being vigilant and finding ways to prevent this. So
yeah, well, again,
so
like we really tried.
Yeah.
We tried to break the mold by having that intervening space of a parking lot between the street edge and the building. So we're trying to, as much as possible, break the visual cues that say stop here, park here, run up to the building. So the design is doing its part. Human nature will have to follow.
Yep. And you're designing it ahead of time as opposed to downtown where they were
high level in the core, that's for sure.
Yeah. So that's great. Unit sizes. Why are there not 3 or even 4 bedroom units for large families? This is something I've noted in most projects. Is it down to affordability of the renter or purchaser?
Yep, I'm happy to address the unit mix, and thank you for the question. 4-bedroom units are fairly uncommon. I'd even go so far as to say rare. I can't remember the last project I worked on with 4 units outside of student residences. But in terms of 3 units and what we sometimes call family-sized units, although the language has kind of moved away from that because we don't want to assume what anybody's typical family makeup is. So we tend to call them large household dwellings. And that's in section 3 of the official plan. That sets out a minimum of 5% for development on main streets, which I'm happy to report we're meeting in this case, but upwards to a target of 10%, which is something the city just would love to see. In our case, we do have some 3-bedroom units at 6 3-bedroom units as part of Tower C, or the first phase of the project. But we also have a number of 2 bedrooms or 2-bedroom plus den. And the reason I bring that up is that the definition of a large household dwelling includes a 3-bedroom unit or a 2-bedroom unit of equivalent size. And so some of the unit sizes that we have here, and I have the data, our 3-bedroom units are over 1,000 square feet. They're considerably large. And then our 2-bedroom units range from 737, 794, 812, and 833 square feet. In my experience, typically any unit that's over that 750 square feet will count as a large household dwelling, particularly if they include a den. For those who don't know, a den is it's not a bedroom, but it is an occupiable space. So typically that would be an office, and then the 2 bedrooms would be bedrooms instead of using one of the bedrooms as an office in case somebody works from home. So we do have a good unit mix on this site. And of course, we're submitting site plan for Tower C, but the comment is well noted that we could always take a look at a different unit mix to respond to the market for Towers A and B when those are ready to go.
Thank you. I know from Ottawa Community Housing, which I chair, and I see developments. We must have 3 and 4 room units, and they're very, very expensive to build because of the square footage they're required. However, in the nonprofit market, they're required because that is who we're catering to, and we're doing that right now at Gladstone Village, for example, and Mosaic. So just as a comparison, it's the cost. And I venture to say that these units would be very, very expensive to rent if they were not non-profit or subsidized. So that's another factor, is the cost to get them. So, but we're certainly doing our part in that respect. So we have a question of what would be taken into consideration or from this meeting or from the comments, or is everything decided and finalized and approved already? Are you taking into account anything that is being asked tonight or in the comments that were received through the application?
Thank you, Councillor, and thanks for the question. We're definitely soliciting feedback. We're taking it back to the team. We're compiling the public comments we received tonight, as well as the public comments that were previously received, in addition to all of the technical comments that we got from staff, and we'll have to provide a resubmission. So definitely to say tonight, we're just taking back feedback. I won't comment on anything we're proposing to change at the moment, but it's certainly not decided, finalized, and approved. There's a reason there's an approvals process through the city.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions, but I'll give you guys time to do a wrap up of anything that you see that you wanted to add. Do you have anything you want to add? Jacob, Andrew?
Just looking through my notes to make sure I touched on everything from going through the public comments earlier. No, I don't have anything specific. I know there were some questions about the technical studies that came through, for example, the noise study, the wind study, and a few other things. I would just note that, again, we just got the technical comments on those, so it'll go through our counterparts at the city, and we'll be happy to continue to work with city staff and to resolve any issues that might have been raised.
Okay. I apologize. I've got a couple of questions here that were submitted earlier, and I forgot to add them. Apologies. One is related to the fact that you're going to be dealing with bedrock that's approximately 6 feet below the ground, and there's a senior center, nursery school, primary school in the area, and so there'll be a lot of noise and disruption for many residents. I guess this is a question to the city. Would you consider arranging regular meetings between the facility representatives and builders to discuss how to mitigate noise and traffic concerns? Yes, that can be done. I am working on such a case with 1047 Richmond Road, where they're digging down real deep, like 3 stories down. It's obviously been a lot of blasting and difficult for the buildings next door. So we we have contacts. I guess the important thing is to have contacts with the builders, with the construction crew, and to be able to say, hey, the concerns that are being proposed. For example, the hours of operation, and whether something's coming up that you should be warned about. There's going to be construction. Let's not kid ourselves. There's going to be construction. So how can it be best managed? And it's possible. So maybe in this case, if you're talking about things that are daytime, are things going to happen at night? Or there's all kinds of things that are going to go on. And communication is important, so you know what to expect. So, like I said, we're in the midst of one already. Can't say it's popular when there's a lot of noise, but at least you know the time periods. Like if you know that it's from X period to X period, that you know that it'll be over at some point, and at that particular point, and they'll move on to the next phase. So I think communication is a big part of it, and making sure we have those contacts and they get back to us quickly. That is very important. So, okay, I think I got this one about the sound. Okay, I think we got them all. If I've missed any, please let me know, and we'll make sure if there's any question you think of later, or that you think got missed, please let us know. We can deal with it. So I'm just going to wrap up now. As mentioned earlier, this zoning bylaw amendment application could be coming to Planning and Housing Committee as early as June. Okay. So we don't have a date yet. That will be advertised in my newsletter. That will be out in many, many forms. And as soon as our office receives confirmation, we'll share it with the communities as well as the newsletter. And if anyone is interested, they can be a delegate at the meeting, either virtual or in person, or contribute a written submission. I want to thank the team from FOTAN for taking the time to meet with the community this evening, and for all of you for attending, listening and asking questions. I really appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. As always, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to contact my office at bayward@ottawa.ca. And as I mentioned, we'll be sharing this recording on YouTube, and we will add this link to our newsletter for those who were not able to attend, and they can hear what was discussed. So I want to thank everybody again, and wish you a good evening. And I hear that there's a hockey game on, so you can so you can go and watch it now. Okay, thank you.